Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode. We got my friend Canaan on here. We're going to talk about music, life, travel. It's going to be a fun episode. Canaan, rip it up for us a little bit. Woo! All right, enjoy the show, everybody. Let's get it rock and rolling. Good morning, everyone. You just heard my friend Canaan on there ripping it up. He's over in the photo here. I had his wife on the show, actually, Natalie Gillahan with photography. You can tell she's a good photographer, man. That's a cool photo. They're rock and rolling. They're one of my favorite couples. So I'm really excited to talk about music and kind of see what we can learn today. So everyone, welcome Canaan onto the show.
Thank you.
Morning, Canaan. How are we doing today?
We're doing good. It's Wednesday. Week's halfway over. The weekend's almost here. We got some holidays coming up, some spring breaks in the future. So life's pretty good right now.
Yeah. So give me a bit of background of what you got going on. And I know you've been bouncing around a little bit across the country. Where we calling from today? And what's got you busy with work-wise? Start with that.
We're calling from Flagstaff, Arizona, northern Arizona here. Beautiful temperatures, about 50 degrees, so can't complain. Work-wise, speaking of music, I gave teaching music a shot until about the end of September. Realized it wasn't really for me, wasn't really my thing. So I jumped back into special education, which is what I was doing previously, and I'm currently a case manager, special education case manager for a Stride K-12.
Yeah.
The name of our school is Arizona Virtual Academy, so I'm happily employed by them.
Oh, cool. So kind of talk about, you've been playing music for how many years now? How many?
I picked up my first bass guitar at 13 years old. So
Dang.
about 14 years now.
Dang. And it seems like a natural progression to like work in it and teach it, but it seems like you rather kind of keep them separate, or at least teaching music wasn't exactly your forte. You're kind of giving me a side story about it before we got started.
Yeah, I don't know. Teaching music is very difficult, I must say. You have to be like very sound in like reading music, key signatures, time signatures, like all the theory behind it, which admittedly I haven't studied for a while. It's very difficult. It doesn't always pay the best. I just kind of decided it wasn't really for me. I tried it. I thought it was a professional dream of mine. I realized I was wrong. So like I mentioned, I kind of jumped back into my old career path, and I enjoyed that pretty thoroughly.
It's kind of cool that I'm so glad I'm getting your perspective and your story on it, because you did it. And I mean, you tried it and you were in it, and kind of, I feel like some of the time, like the curiosity killed the cat. Like if we don't even try it, then we would never really know. But I mean, you're still playing music as a hobby. Like in the introduction, you're shredding it up for us. So
yeah,
I'm sure it feels good that that you were in it.
It felt good to try. Like when I studied music in college originally, I was thinking of career paths, and I'm like, maybe I would like to try teaching this someday and like transferring my knowledge onto younger students. And the position that I was working with was involving stringed instruments, and the only string instrument that I know is the upright bass. I got an electric bass here, but it's like the upright version, the wooden version, the old school version. But I was dealing with like violins and violas and cellos, and I never played those before. So as you can imagine, it didn't transpire very well.
You mentioned that you were working with children and like
Mm,
pretty young, right?
yes.
So do you think it was the children part possibly that was a bit much? Could you see yourself say like I wanted to learn later in life? Could you see yourself doing lessons with like an adults or
Yeah, yeah, I actually think I would enjoy that. And I don't want to say it was the children that was the problem. It was the amount of children. Um,
okay.
they were dumping like 30 to 35 like 6-year-old kids in my room, and it was
Yeah.
just chaotic. Like they would destroy my room and we would get nothing done. It was just behavior management all the time. Um, so yeah, it was not necessarily the kids, but just the large amount of them was an issue for me.
Do they have programs where they do or I imagine there's one of my one of my good friends in town here, his younger daughter goes and does like private lessons with
Yeah.
kids. Or could you see yourself you'd prefer to do it with like adults? Like if, kind of just playing around with the
Um,
idea.
I would be open to teach music to kids again, more preferably like bass or guitar or piano. That's more of my understanding of instruments
Yeah.
in a private lesson setting. But I don't think I would ever want to teach that many kids at once again. Like a group of like 5 maximum would be perfect, where you can kind of redirect them and
Yeah. It seems like a tornado just rolling through. Yeah. Shout out to the folks kind of making all that manage. I guess, Brian, I'm really curious on just you sharing your story and a little bit your journey with music because it seems like it's really carried you like through a bunch of really cool stuff like
yeah.
throughout life, like where you went to school and where like playing with other people like in the city of Chicago. Do you mind telling me a bit about just your journey in music and kind of how it unfolded? It's really cool.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I picked up my first bass guitar when I was 13. I was instantly hooked. Um, I remember I was given a bass guitar by a woman who worked at our church for free. I always wanted one. I always wanted to play the bass since I was like 10 years old, but I never actually went out and got one. So I saw this opportunity and instantly, like, there's a thing called tablature where, like, if you see on the fretboard here, it actually tells you like where you're supposed to play on the fretboard. On the bass, there's 4 strings. Um, I didn't know anything about reading notes, so I looked up this tablature and I was like learning all these Red Hot Chili Pepper songs, which were my favorite band at the time. If you know anything about the Chili Peppers, though, their bass player he's insanely talented. So like I was playing like simplified versions of that because I couldn't compare at 13 years old. Um, and over the years, I kept playing. I was in a band in high school for a year or two. Practiced pretty intently with them. But I wanted to take it a little bit further, so I decided to attend college at Columbia College in Chicago, which is like a liberal arts school, and study music there. I initially went there to study just bass guitar, upright bass, jazz bass, etc. After my second year there, I was like, yeah, I enjoy this. I'm learning so much about this instrument, but I wanted to learn how to like create my own songs, learn how to compose. So I switched my major over to music composition, which was no joke. It was very intense. I didn't know anything about it, and I had to study so much just to keep up with the other peers in the class because they already were into that sort of thing. But I had the opportunity to play with some really good bands in during my college years and perform at our college's end of the year graduation in my junior year, which was like a big whole production. There was singing, dancing, bands, playing music, kind of like we had this like orchestration where like your turn to be on the stage. This is where you exit. This is where you enter. These are the times that you play. I had a lot of really cool experiences doing that. But for like the past 4 or 5 years, I would say my main experience with music would be composing my own songs, with bass, guitar, piano, and then I would outsource to other musicians that I knew, and they would implant their drum parts or their lead guitar parts, or in some cases even vocals on them because I can't sing very well. Um, but it's just been a journey, putting these songs together, kind of taking what's in your head and putting it out into audio track.
This like creative process seems so nuts,
Yeah.
and also um, playing it. What's it like to be playing in a band? Is it as cool as people say? Is it a bunch of drama? Is it a pain or what because I remember you talking about a few different groups that you were kind of playing with.
Yeah, it really depends on the group of people that you're with. There were some bands that I like initially started to play in ensembles in college that were mainly like rhythm and blues cover bands. Excuse me. No disrespect to the rhythm or blues, but I just don't really like playing in cover bands. I like to kind of explore musically, like see what I can come up with, see what other people can come up with. But everything that you mentioned, it's a little mix of everything. There's drama. Unfortunately, there's it's a lot of fun though if you get with the right group of people. There's a lot of talented artists out there that I was fortunate enough to work with and make songs with and put my name in the same credits as them for the song, which is really cool.
So
Um,
cool.
yeah, it's just a mixture. It really depends who you're with though, and the kind of the vibe you're getting from that person or group of people.
Totally. And this, I mean, you had to be in really high demand in the world of, to my understanding, there's this many guitar players and this many bass players. And
Right.
so, like, just absolutely, Kanan, come on. Was that really common? Did you see that at was that common in like school and kind of as you kind of see in the music industry?
Yeah, I was shocked at the amount of guitar players there are out there, especially where I went to college, living in a big city like Chicago. I was once told a quote by one of my professors that for every 1,000 guitar players, there's one bass player.
Holy
So,
cow.
yeah, I felt like I chose the right instrument for what I wanted to get into because, I mean, if I started playing guitar at 13, I don't really know how good I would be, but like I feel like I would have been outshined by all these prodigies that played guitar, whereas I can just stand there in the background and play my bass and be part of the group.
Is that, I mean, is there something to that? It seems like there's so much personality in music. A big reason why I wanted to talk to you today. Do you think is that like why you chose bass? Or you just kind of, you were already in it? Or like why bass over, the hundreds of other instruments within music?
Bass really caught my attention. The first time it did, um, I was in church. I was a kid, probably like 9 or 10 years old, and they would play the worship songs at the beginning. And I wasn't really focused on the guitar, like the rhythm guitar, the acoustic guitar, the chords. It was that loud boom that really caught my attention, and I was like, "What is that?" So I started diving into the bass guitar, like researching about it, and it just really struck me as so cool because all the other instruments, like you can hear them clearly, but bass you can really feel in your body. Like if you're at a concert, like a rock concert, you can feel that bass like vibrating through your body, and that's what really drew to me as well. Personality wise, I think it's a perfect instrument for me. I was never like the most outspoken person. So like when it transforms to a band setting, I'm not like the the center of attention. I'm just there doing my job, being part of the group, being part of the band, and that was the perfect role for me and my personality, I feel like.
That's so cool. It's, it seems so hard to put the, like, you got to really want to enjoy it. I can't even, I wish we had a little clock of how many hours that you've put in over the years. I mean, what's some advice you have for folks listening, or just like for yourself, on how you balance working, playing, working, family, like just balancing
Yeah.
all of this and like staying on and practicing? Like, what have you kind of learned over the years?
I mean, I'm sure you've heard of this rule, but it's called the 10,000 hour rule. It's a pretty popular kind of idea that's out there. Basically, it says if you put 10,000 hours of your time into anything, like, you will master it. Like, it's not going to go away. I mean, practice is still important, and I feel like I haven't been able to play as much as I want to, especially being a new father.
Yeah,
Um,
congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I have other priorities at the moment, but I still occasionally I'll take out my bass or take out my guitar and play around a little bit if he's sleeping, or if I have some downtime. But if I had a piece of advice, it would be, don't let the critics get to your head. When I was in college, I remember pretty much one of my professors like played my composition. It was like my very first one, and he basically said that it was shit in front of the entire class. And that I let that get to me for the longest time. And like,
Yeah.
it wasn't until like I graduated college and I was like, you know what, like, I was still learning. I have to cut myself some slack. So my biggest piece of advice for anyone getting into music, or like anyone that's been in music or likes to create music, is like, don't let other people's critics of your art get to your personal feelings, because everyone's going to have their own opinion. Some people are going to like what you make, some people aren't going to like it, and that's perfectly fine. So yeah, I would say that's my biggest piece of advice.
Dang. Yeah. This, I mean, it just transcends into everything, right? This willingness to create. You leaned into the creative side. You like making things from yourself, leveraging your personality, but just being vulnerable enough that, I mean, you're doing this for you, not, other people, and the things that you create and you enjoy. I wanted to kind of ask you just some things that I think a lot of people do really well with, just mentors and like other people. Are there a few people in your life who really influenced you getting into music, making music, people who you still really resonate with today that have really inspired you?
I've had a few musical friends, particularly in the Chicagoland area, where I spent about 6 years of my life. I still keep in touch with them. There are some artists that I've got to work with that just blew me away. Like, there was one of my old friends that went to college with me. He was from Mongolia,
Cool.
living in Chicago, and he was an amazing pianist. Like, he has some songs that I've listened to that sound like they could be the soundtrack of a movie. It's that good. Um, as far as like getting into bass and getting into music, nobody really inspired me. I really looked up to like rock stars. Sometimes I felt like I was born in the wrong generation, because when I was growing up, everyone was like looking up to like rappers, and I was like listening to like Pink Floyd and Red Hot Chili Peppers and like 70s, 80s, and 90s music, and those are the people that really inspired me to get into bass.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've just been so fortunate to work with a lot of talented people, and that kind of keeps me going, knowing that there are people out there that are interested in the same things that you are.
Where do people go to like learn about music? Like, say if you want to like learn more and or get started, or maybe even like find people to play with in like a community sense. What are some ways that you think people can like just learn about it and grow with it?
I mean, living in the 21st century with all the access to like everything that we have in the world at the palm of our hands, I feel like the internet is a good place. There's like social media sites like Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn to an extent, where you can
Yeah.
find you can find people in your community that are interested in music, could maybe form a band, could maybe jam out. Even in Flagstaff, I had some luck, but not much, kind of reaching out to local Facebook groups, looking for musician friends. I feel like that's always a good place to start. But in terms of finding that right person that just clicks with you musically, it could be a really long journey. I've only had a couple of those experiences so far. And I moved to the other side of the country, and now I don't really have much contact with those people. I do send them, they're called stems. Like when you record an audio file and you bounce just that audio file, it's called a stem. I'll send them stems to some songs, and then they can add tracks, like drum tracks, vocal tracks, guitar tracks, whatever, in their own studio, and then send it back to me. So you don't really have to be like in the same atmosphere to create music with somebody nowadays, which is really cool.
Are you the type of person that I kind of wanted to talk about your process on creating music? When it comes to music and it comes to art and stuff, I've always been really intimidated by it for some reason. I think just not diving into it and other slew of reasons. But do you prefer to kind of talking about your process of making music? Do you like a group setting? Do you like being by yourself, or kind of like what's your process for that?
Typically in the past, I've liked to be by myself. In my older apartments before I moved in with my then girlfriend and now wife, I kind of had like my own little music studio set up where I was living.
Cool.
I had my keyboard out, I had my speakers, I had my computer that I used to record music open at all times and like constantly charging. And I would have my bass, and I would have my guitar, I would have my cables and my cords and everything I needed to plug in. And like that was a very comfortable setting for me. And I recorded a lot of music that way. It was just very, very calming, no pressure. I feel like when you're around other people, there's like kind of pressure to like, if you mess up, it's like, oh no, which I personally don't like. But being by myself and kind of like getting my thoughts out onto the audio is where I'm most comfortable.
Dang, that's so cool. What's I wanted to kind of just talk about the lifestyle of music outside looking in. And I mean, you've been kind of in really cool spots of the world. And I mean, kind of what was the music lifestyle in like Chicago, and then how would you compare that to other parts of the country that you've lived and you've been able to travel to?
Yeah, Chicago is a very like hustle city, like constantly going, constantly, you know, trying for the best. You're competing with millions of people. Um, I mean, I feel like it brought out a lot of good work in me. Like I was constantly driven because there were people out there doing the same thing, and like I wanted to be recognized too, personally. So like I would kind of keep that edge when I was creating. But moving out here to Flagstaff into the West, it's more of a relaxed vibe. I don't feel pressure. I haven't even like really recorded much in the past year, mainly because I sold my speakers for an amp, which I kind of regret. But um, I don't know. Just living in a big city, it's very competitive. It's very hustle and bustle. There's really no time to relax. You're kind of constantly going all the time, and like that wore me out. Looking back, like I was exhausted. Um, I was staying up way too late working on songs when I should be sleeping and getting rest. But moving out to this part of the country, it's very relaxed. I've had more time to do things like enjoy nature, be outside with the nicer weather. So yeah, there's definitely a difference in where you're located.
This idea that, yeah, I mean, just competition, go, go, go. And I remember living in Chicago and coming and visiting and stuff. And yeah, you would go like later in the night, rock and rolling and do your thing. And
Yeah.
it's, was it I mean, what were some of the consequences of doing that? Do you kind of remember or could kind of share on that? It seems like the music lifestyle can be like really brutal. Like, what were things that you were feeling and like other things that you were learning about yourself while you were doing that?
First and foremost, I was definitely lacking sleep. I wasn't getting enough sleep because the nighttime was kind of my time to create. Like I didn't have any other obligations or responsibilities. I took care of all that during the day. So the nighttime I saved for myself. I feel like people that get really into music and are able to have the opportunity to do it professionally and for money and for a living. I feel like there's a lot of room for substance abuse to creep in. Personally, I feel like there's so much pressure to create good things, good songs, pop songs, hits, etc., that you start to lose trust in your natural ability and you think you need drugs or alcohol or whatever it may be to kind of get those creative juices flowing. And I feel like that's why we see so many, artists, especially musical artists, die at a young age from drug overdoses or, suicides or whatever you have it, because they get so deep into these drugs and substances to help them create that they depend on them, and then it just takes over from there.
Yeah. Were you ever able to find like a balance with that? I mean, is it all bad, or is there like some good to that, to using like drugs to make music? You see it so often, so you think like, oh, it must work or it must help, from the outside looking in.
I mean, from my own experience, there's been some instances where it has got those creative juices flowing like instantly, like as soon as whatever substance you choose kicks in, like you're like, okay, I'm in the zone, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to make something badass. And sometimes you do. But there's also risks that come with that. There's dependency, addiction. If you're talking about like psychedelic substances like LSD or mushrooms, it can really mess you up mentally if you don't know what you're doing. And I think balance is difficult when you're really crazily obsessed with something. I used to stay up all night for like 12 hours at a time throughout the night playing songs and recording songs. And looking back, I'm like, okay, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. I'm glad that I experienced that before I was married and had a child, because there's no way I could run off 2 hours of sleep now. But yeah, it was fun. It was fun kind of adventuring and doing that and kind of digging out thoughts and putting them into the music software. But I feel like for now, I'm trying to get more balanced. I'm trying to like play music. It's less of a priority for me than it used to be. It's like my first priority is obviously my family, and then my career, and then music kind of comes in at like third or fourth. But in the future, I see myself finding more time for it, balancing it out with family time and professional time. But yeah, it wasn't always like that.
Dude, no, yeah, it's I'm laughing because I just know you and how like you were just so committed, and a lot of the stuff you were making was so cool and good. And but yeah, there's not all pros, and there's always some cons. I find it interesting that we talk about these things and we hardly regret them. Like, do you regret that part of your life, or are you glad you did that and you experienced it?
I don't really regret it. Um, Looking back, I could have been more cautious about what I was doing. I don't really have to go into too much detail about that, but the lack of sleep was a big one. I mean, I would stay up for a day or two at a time, and then the sleep deprivation would kick in, and you're like, hallucinating because you're so sleep deprived, and then you sleep for 20 hours. It just wasn't a healthy cycle. But everyone's young once. I mean, I was in my early 20s. Like, if there's a time to experiment with that and like kind of dive into the music world, then that was the time, I guess. I'm in my late 20s now, so like obviously I have different priorities, and I feel like I've done a good job of getting my priorities straight. But it did take me a couple years to kind of be like, okay, there's more to life than just, making music all the time and staying up all night and rock and roll.
Yeah. This kind of shift in there's a time and a place for different priorities and experiments and opportunities to kind of go for it and trial and error. I just find it so interesting that we talk about these things and how bad they are, but people rarely regret doing them. And they're like, I was young and I had a chance to really live and go. And of course, I'm a life coach. I'm not telling you to go out, like not sleep for 2 days. I'm not saying that,
Right.
but I think you don't want to be too cautious, or else you kind of miss out on really living and experiencing things that you'll always remember. And I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff. And do you miss Chicago at all?
Um, to an extent, I miss certain things about living in a bigger city. Um, First of all, like as a musician, there's thousands, if not tens or hundreds of thousands of fellow musicians out there that go to that city for the same reason you do. I live in a much smaller town now. It's like 90,000, give or take, and it's harder to find that, which has been a little disappointing, admittedly. So I'm kind of stuck making music on my own, which isn't a problem, but I do kind of miss the big city lifestyle, like late nights, endless opportunities, millions of people to like find the same interests as you. It's a little bit different in a smaller town, but I don't know. I'm not personally. I'm not really a big fan of that city, but I do miss some aspects of a bigger city. Yeah.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite things about living in like a smaller area? I mean, Flagstaff and Chicago are like literally polar opposites.
Right.
It's crazy that they're in the same country, really. But what are some of your favorite things about Flagstaff now that you've kind of transitioned into ultimate, like a completely different life?
The natural beauty is the biggest thing for me. During the summer and spring, it's a little bit easier to enjoy because even though we're in Arizona, we do get a lot of snow up here. Um, but this winter has been pretty warm. Like it was like 55 degrees today. So I was, you could walk outside with shorts if you wanted to. But the natural beauty is amazing. Like just being able to see that every day and like drive around, even when you're doing errands, just like look up and see the mountains. And that's something that I was never used to being from the Midwest. So it really makes you appreciate nature a lot more.
Yeah. Getting closer to nature, do you think being close to nature has had an impact on you in like the world of music?
Um, I don't know. Some people are really inspired by nature. I don't know if it necessarily inspires me like musically, but it inspires me in other ways. Like it makes me feel better, like overall, like happier, more natural serotonin, stuff like that, and like more sunshine. Like we get sunshine like 340 days out of the year, or something crazy like that. So, and then obviously your vitamin D goes up. So there's a lot of stuff that plays into that. But as far as inspiring me musically, I don't really think there's a much of a connection now.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, just being out, it seems like kind of depending on style and instrument, and there's so many. And for you, it kind of seems like you've really thrived in just using the landscape of like your own mind
Yeah.
and just kind of putting yourself in a room and like kind of just letting your imagination. I gotta say, you probably have one of the stronger imaginations out of like anyone I know. And how do you kind of use your imagination nowadays for kind of just being a better person? You've always been so creative.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. That's interesting subjects. Like I never really thought of myself as like I would potentially want to be a creative type or like an artist type or a musician type. It was just something I enjoyed to do. Um, but I don't know. I was always really goofy and silly, like naturally. So like I like to be really goofy and silly with my son, and he's getting to the age where he's starting to like smile and laugh and react. He's a little over 1 month old, so like we're starting to see those reactions, and they're really bold now. So like I kind of like to be like, okay, how can I make him giggle now? Like what can I say? What can I do that's really silly? And then I like to think about in the future, like when he gets older, like 1 or 2 years old, and when he's really interactive, and be like, okay, like how can I use my natural silliness and goofiness to make him happy, to make him laugh, stuff like that. It's weird when you have a child, your like priorities kind of change, and
Yeah. You
I don't know.
being, I mean, how has being becoming a father changed you? You think? I mean, they say it's the most fulfilling thing you can do.
It is. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of crying. I mean, I already knew that. Everyone knows that. But like until like the baby is yours and it's crying and like you're like, what can I do? What can I do? Um, but just the most rewarding part about it is fulfilling his essential needs. Like when he's hungry, you're there to feed him. You watch him eat, and like you know that's what he needs to survive. And like you're providing basic essentials necessities for another human, which is just crazy to think about. That's like my favorite part of it is like I'm contributing to this person surviving.
Yeah. No, that's really beautiful. It's being able to, it's just something it's just beyond like you. Well, it is you. Like, like we were laughing about the before the show. It's like it's your DNA. It's you. It's. Do you think you're more motivated now, or were you more motivated back then in your 20s?
Um, I would say I'm more motivated now, but for different reasons. I mean, I'm motivated to be the best father I can be and provide for him. And with that being said, it means that I have to take a little bit of sacrifice for things like I want to do. Music has only been a hobby for me. I did get to play professionally for my school's graduation, and we got paid for it, so that was pretty cool. But I never had like a serious income with music. I would like to someday, but you know, I really have to like step up the professional game, get income, provide for him in his future. Like 18 years down the road, when he's going to college, we have to have money put back for that. So it's a lot of future planning, financial planning that like in the past I was only taking care of myself, and then I got married, and then it was me and my wife, and we were taking care of ourselves and each other. And now we're taking care of a child, which has its own set of expenses. So there's a lot of motivation there just for different things, if that makes sense.
Yeah. This I've always had this weird limiting belief or fear that having a child would limit my ability to perform for my career, but I get corrected all the time that it's the opposite, that it would actually fuel the fire to provide for someone that is, you know, like I'm raising, and that's my own. And you're talking about how beautiful it is to just help someone reach their needs. I think it really touches on how special it is um, to give and to nurture other people and what it does for us.
Yeah. I mean, in the case of like my professional career, since he was born, like I do feel a sense of motivation to like be the best I can be. You know, there's like if you work for like a company, for example, there's like pay raises, there's promotions, there's stuff you can earn, and it's like, okay, I want to get that because it would benefit him. So there is like, it does light the fire a little bit, because you're not only responsible for yourself, you're responsible for your family. And there's a lot of, responsibility that goes with that. But I can see both sides. I mean, it's also very exhausting. It's hard to get up every morning. When your child was screaming all night and crying all night and not being able to sleep very well, and the sleep deprivation kicks in. But it's a mixture. It's really fascinating, the whole thing.
Man, you've been battling sleep your entire life, it seems like.
Yeah, lately I've been trying to get better sleep, though. For like the first time in my life, I've been sleeping fairly well when I get the chance.
How many hours you try to get a night?
My minimum I try to get in the night is like 5 to 7, maximum like 8.
Okay.
So not great, but not terrible.
Is that,
like,
how do you feel? Yeah.
I feel good. I feel focused. I don't feel tired. I feel like it's a good amount for me. From what I've heard from other parents, though, as they get older, it does get a little bit easier. They maybe don't sleep through the entire night, but you can maybe catch like 5, 6, 7 hours at a time. I have a cousin who is recently a new father too. His child's 5 months old. And he's like, yeah, it gets better. He sleeps like 5 to 7 hours his first time sleeping through the night. And I'm like, that sounds great. Because for newborns, it's like 2 to 3 hours, and then even less sometimes. They're pretty unpredictable.
That's insane. Man, I sleep like 9 to 10 hours a night, G. No joke. It's ridiculous. I don't know. So sometimes I feel like I'm wasting my life a little bit, but I just feel so good doing that. And but not to anyway. So sleep's interesting. It's a third of our lives, and it's so crucial to like the creative process. Do you think you're more creative or less creative when you get more sleep? Because I know you're talking about how you were sometimes hallucinating from like lack of sleep.
Yeah. I don't know. I used to personally feel very creative at nighttime. So that kind of adds to the lack of sleep I was getting, because like I mentioned, like I had priorities during the day. I was in grad school, I was teaching, I was doing master's classes. And then the nighttime came, and I'm like, okay, this is my opportunity. Because like you mentioned, sleep is like a third of your life. And I'm like, I don't want to waste that time away for doing things I want to do. So it was during the night where I felt most creative. I feel like whether I got sleep or not didn't really matter. But it was during that night, those night hours, when like I kind of felt like I'm the only one up right now. Like I can do whatever I want. I can be as creative as I want to. I don't know. That was just kind of my mindset.
Are you a big dreamer? Do you have a lot really intense dreams? You dream much?
I do. I have really weird dreams that don't make a lot of sense, and it just doesn't add up. Like it's not logical at all.
I recently quit smoking marijuana, and my dreams have been bonkers since I quit dreaming. I was watching this Andrew Huberman episode. He's talking about pot, and he said like once you stop smoking, because I used to be an evening smoker. I love smoking a little bit of weed and like watching a good show with my girlfriend. It's like my favorite thing in the world. But when I stopped doing it, my dreams were just absolutely bonkers. But I do feel like I'm sleeping better. It just, dreams are wild.
Yeah, that's good. I also feel like, so I used to take melatonin, which like enhanced your dreams, like made them more lucid, I guess. But like when Natalie got pregnant, they recommended not to take melatonin, but there's this sleep alternative called Unisum that pregnant women take. So I started taking it too to help me sleep, and like it's just the same. Like your dreams just become lucid and insane.
Do you have an example that recently you remember that was crazy?
Yeah, there was a dream that actually like kind of scared me for a little bit because I don't know why like my mind goes to this, but there was a dream, more of like a nightmare that I had recently where I was in a room and there was like a strange man in there and he was like saying a bunch of ritualistic type stuff and all the furniture started spinning around and it felt like I was in like The Exorcist or something. It was no makes no sense at all. I don't know what to make of it.
I I don't know if you've like heard of Carl Jung. He talks a lot about how there's so much like stuff going on in like our subconscious and how it like it's brought out when like we're sleeping and stuff and how it kind of just like it's just throwing random stuff like together. So it just creates this absolute state. But that's like somehow relaxing for your brain to just like throw it all together and not like worry about keeping everything in order for a
Yeah.
while. I think studying more about dreaming would be cool. Well, before we dive into some personal development questions, just some coaching questions here with Canaan. So talking about music, and do you have any more advice on people like physically? For I wanted to ask you, I was starting to play the piano a little bit. Not gonna lie, pretty much stopped doing that, and I was having a lot of issues like with my wrists. I type a lot for work, and I like write these activity reports for my clients and all this, and then I'd go play a little bit, and I'd go try, and like my wrists were getting jacked up. Like, do you have any advice for some of the physicality within music, which I think is interesting? I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, first of all, I've heard, I mean, I have decently sized hands, so like I can like stretch across the fretboard pretty easily. But I've heard it's harder to play bass and guitar if you have like smaller fingers. And unfortunately, there's really no cure for that. You just got to like work on stretching them and like stretching your pinky out. Because like a lot of people when they first start playing, they like to use their first two fingers and like just play with these two. But like with guitars, you really have to like use your pinky and use this weird finger that is uncomfortable to stretch. Um, but in terms of playing piano with like wrist issues, I know some aspects of playing music extensively can cause like carpal tunnel. So I would recommend like a wrist brace or like talk to your doctor about like some sort of brace for your wrists because I had a lot of wrist issues growing up and it kind of made it uncomfortable to play bass, but I never wore any braces. I probably should have. Another thing physically with playing guitar and bass especially is the calluses that you get on your fingers and the blisters that you get on your fingers. Those are just inevitable. It's just part of the process. Eventually they'll harden over. But yeah, I mean, it can be a toll on your body. When I was in college, I did a ensemble over winter break, and I was the bass player in that ensemble, and we had 12-hour days of practice. So like by the end of like the third day, I had blisters on top of my blisters, and that there was really nothing I could do about it. It's just part of it.
Dang, you just gotta tough it out.
Yeah, it's
Brutal.
just one of those things.
Yeah. Okay, Kanan. Well, we're gonna chip away at a couple of these questions here to get so you
Okay.
guys can get a little bit better to know Kanan. I'm gonna switch up the screen so you guys can see a little bit here. I'm gonna actually knock this banner out, so get that rid of that so we can see a little bit. Always coming to the coaching board, working on ourselves, trying to become the superheroes for the people we love and care about most. How's everyone doing this morning? Maybe you're grabbing a cup of coffee and you just want to journal and get some of these questions down. But Kanan, my man, starting with the first powerful question, I want to ask you, what is one way that you can be kinder to yourself? What is one way that you can be kinder to yourself?
One way I can be kinder to myself is hitting the gym a little bit more and eating delicious food a little bit less.
Gym and food. Okay. Next up, we have, what is one thing that you love about yourself? What is one thing that you love about yourself?
One thing that I love about myself is I've recently grown into the role of a provider. I love working hard to like help the people that I love. I guess you can say I'm a bit of a family man, but I don't know, I love when people like reap the benefits, and myself included, of the work that I put in, the people close to me.
Yeah. I feel like do you have a stronger sense of purpose?
Yes, definitely.
That's awesome. The purpose of life is to have purpose. Go figure. Okay, next question we have. What is one thing that you want to celebrate at the end of this year?
Um, at the end of this year, I'll be going on 3 years sober off of Adderall, which I struggled with,
Wow, good for you.
addiction and dependency. So in December 1st of 2024, I'll be 3 years off of that stuff.
That's
So
awesome.
that's a big celebration for me personally.
Yeah, be careful of that stuff. I remember in graduate school, people were eating those suckers like candy. I was just blown away.
Myself included.
Okay, sobriety. Yeah, again, congratulations on that. What is your biggest challenge right now?
My biggest challenge is I'm still figuring this father thing out. I'm constantly questioning myself, like, am I doing enough? Am I doing too much? Did I do what I was supposed to do? Like, there's a lot of what ifs with fatherhood, especially in the early stages, where you may not always have the answers, but you learn as you go.
This a bit of kind of almost incorporating one of our first questions, being a little kinder to ourselves, letting ourselves off the hook as we learn and we evolve. And kind of sounds like you have a real opportunity to maybe challenge or improve that internal dialogue as you're kind of going around in fatherhood.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of unknowns.
Unknown, the fear of the unknown.
Right.
Last question for you. What is your number one goal? What is your number one goal?
Is that for like this year or just in general?
Whatever comes to mind, man. What's your number one goal? If you could have only one thing and you pursued it, you achieved it, what would that be? Just one.
I want to, this kind of pertains to what I first said, but I kind of want to get in the same physical shape that I was a couple years ago. I used to be a gym rat. You would know, Tanner. We used to work out together. And
yeah, that was fun.
My physical health, I would want that to be at top notch again.
There's something about it. When it's getting done, you talked about getting sunshine and being out west, and just there's something about that's going on in the body. Blood's flowing, confidence is high, just how you look and how you feel. It's just like a completely different universe when we're in shape versus when sometimes we're struggling because we have so many responsibilities going on.
Right.
Okay. What's some you talked about, might as well hit this a little bit just in one more layer. You mentioned it twice. What's some advice for yourself for setting up your schedule for food and fitness?
Well, right now we're playing a bit of a waiting game. My wife has about 1 or 2 weeks left until she's cleared by the doctor to lift heavier weights again. And maybe I'm kind of using that as an excuse for myself because I could be going, but it's something we wanted to do together. So we want to get on a consistent gym schedule when the timing's right, maybe like 3 to 4 times a week starting off, and slowly increasing that to like 5, 6 times a week. But in terms of food, I would like to not give in to the temptations of fatty, delicious foods and stick to a solid eating schedule, like 3 meals a day. Got the carbs I need, the proteins I need, the vegetables I need. Because I used to be really good at that. It's like all I would eat. And then sometimes things slip away from you, but I want to get back on track. So there's not really like a set diet or anything. I just want to eat better overall, exercise more. I started going to physical therapy for some issues I've been having for a while, so that's a plus.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so I'm starting to try to take a little bit better care of myself personally.
I find this really interesting because it's usually one of the two, or at least I've in my own experience, it's like we really need to be taking action, or we need to be kinder to ourselves. Whether it's like I'm already setting things up, I need to be kinder to myself, or I need to be very realistic and I need to be making real changes. It seems like it's so hard to find the balance between the two because usually I'm just being really hard on myself, but there's definitely more and there's room for improvement, and that improvement feels good.
Yeah, it does feel good when you start to see results, not only physically, but like mentally, emotionally. Like if you've been putting work into like those things, like you mentioned journaling, therapy, talking to someone, really, like you can start to see improvements in other aspects besides physically. It is a really good feeling to kind of notice change.
Yeah. Well, Canaan, my man, you're a really interesting guy. I'm so glad that you came on the show. We got to talk about everything from music, sleep, lifestyle, and just ways that we can be a better version of ourselves. So I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate your time.
All right, Canaan, you mind playing something for us as we get out of here?
I have to turn my amp on real quick, but I do not mind at all.
All right, folks, we're going to end this wonderful Friday session with a little bit of tunes. You get your day going. You're rocking and rolling. I love y'all. Let's keep it going. Canaan, go ahead. Take us away when you're ready, my friend. All right, folks, you guys have an incredible day. Canaan, wave goodbye. You stick around with me after the show. Love you all. Have an incredible Friday. Cheers, friends. We're out.